So you just had a great announcement yesterday on your recent round. Maybe let's kick off with that.
Yeah, for sure. We're super excited. We just raised another 43 million in venture financing. Round was led by Accrue Capital. They're a really cool firm. Somewhat newer. They were started, I think, 6 years ago, and their founder is Teresa Gao. She's, I believe, the maybe the only or the first female VC billionaire, and came from Excel. We were just super impressed with the whole Accrue team. Like, really enjoyed meeting them. Felt like they really understood our problem space. They do quite a bit in healthcare. So yeah, I felt like a really good partnership and fit. And yeah, and then we got a bunch of support from our existing investors like GV and Sequoia and Spark Capital. So yeah, we feel really fortunate that the round came together like it did, and we're excited to use this capital to keep going after our mission to eliminate as much administrative waste as possible in U.S. healthcare.
There's only a select set or percentage of startups that are able to attract the type of investors you've attracted. What do you attribute that to? Did you have pre-existing relationships or maybe even good working situations in your past before you started Medallion?
I had started one company before this one that was acquired, and that company went through Y Combinator. Um, but that company actually did not raise that much money. We only raised 700K roughly, and by today's standards, like it's essentially like nothing. And I think Y Combinator itself gives like 500K now to new startups. So we raised very little, but I did know a couple investors from that experience, and they did help to ultimately see the company. I don't think it was just because of the relationships, but I think that helps when you, especially at the seed stage, have developed relationships over time. Because at the seed, you're really betting on the founders and founding team, because there typically is like very little data. Maybe that's changing a little bit now with how fast some things are moving with AI, but largely I think still today at seed, it's based on your conviction in the founder and the people that are starting the company. So I do think that they helped a little bit, but then I mean, certainly the majority of the capital we've raised has been from investors and firms that I had no prior relationship with, really. So yeah, I'd say that how we've been able to accomplish it is a combination of business traction as well as continued conviction in the team that we're building to continue to execute on the pretty aggressive goals and milestones that we're looking to achieve.
And your solution is pretty specific within the overall healthcare, health tech space. Let's start off with how you first uncovered this problem that you would
Yeah.
go and solve.
Yeah, for sure. I was exploring actually a couple different ideas in healthcare, and then I ended up talking to a friend of mine who has founded a pretty substantial digital health company. They're a few hundred million in revenue. And I was asking him, he was the one person at the time that I knew in healthcare. I actually didn't know anybody else really that was building in healthcare or really was in healthcare at all. And so I was very new to the space, and I ended up talking to him. I went to his office in New York and sat down with him for like 20 minutes and was asking him actually about this completely different idea that I had in essentially building a crowdsourcing platform for rare disease diagnostics. And yeah, in the end, I asked him in the last 5 minutes of the conversation how he scaled his company and what some of the top challenges were in that journey. And that's where he talked about everything that we do today. He was essentially like, credentialing is a massive pain point, and it's still really unsolved. You have to hire a bunch of people. It's a bunch of manual paperwork, manual processes. And yeah, that's how I learned about this problem space and got really excited about the ability to make an impact in healthcare. We're behind the scenes, so we're not obviously in the front lines of care. But if you look at just the amount of spend like every year that's spent on healthcare administration, it's $1.5 trillion.
Mhm.
I think at the time that I started the company 5 years ago, it was like a trillion. So it's like, it's only been climbing. And McKinsey actually a few years ago did this whole study on the back office and all the different places that they thought there's inefficient or wasted spend. And the number they came up with at the time was like 300 million. So I think that probably has only increased. Maybe it's like, half, sorry, 300 billion. So it's probably now maybe even like half a trillion. So it's a lot of wasted spend. And yeah, I mean, I hope that more people come in to build it in this space, because definitely not, it is not a single one company that's going to really make a difference. It's going to be a collection of a bunch of companies.
Did you kind of wonder why this hadn't been solved before? I mean, you would think that maybe one of the existing software providers to,
Yeah.
these healthcare organizations would have offered a module related to that.
Well, so I think it's a couple of things. One is, a kind of a structural thing about the way that the current market works, like the incumbents in this market, which is that they really serve the teams that are doing this work. And so they're kind of like, Monday.com or Airtable, but specific for these workflows. So it's workflow software, but it's not actually automation. At least not in a big way. They offer some automation for pieces of the puzzle, but very, very limited. And so our goal from the start was to be able to actually take on the entire workflow and automate all of it. And so, yeah, I mean, especially now with AI, that's never been more possible.
Mhm.
And I think the way that we've been trying to build the business actually was in some ways a little bit ahead of its time, because there were things that, 5 years ago, we thought we would never be able to automate, such as phone calling, that now actually we have been able to automate because of AI.
Mhm. So, and you have great use case example on your website about with the Tampa hospital. Um, Maybe tell us for the benefit of our audience, the exact pain point. How long did it take before? What was the pre-existing process for credentialing, and what has your solution done? And how much has it reduced the time to credential?
Yeah. So I guess firstly, credentialing is a bit of an overloaded term. It actually, like, if you're operating in the industry, it means a bunch of different things. So I'll give you an example. People might call cross-state licensing, right? Like getting providers licensed in different states for telehealth credentialing. And then there's also payer credentialing, where you're actually, working with insurance payers to register your provider network with insurance payers. And so there's different types of workflows that are actually pretty different. I mean, they all have a lot of commonalities from a data perspective, and like the steps are largely the same, but they're different. And so it depends on the exact specific workflow we're talking about. But the most automated we've gotten a workflow is essentially near 100% automated. And so um, yeah, that's a bit about just like the under the hood, and we use a combination of traditional automation techniques, and then now, yeah, newer techniques like AI to automate various pieces of these workflow steps. Um, and yeah, the way that it's done today without a solution like Medallion is typically that you're hiring a team of people, and they're then, doing a lot of these workflows manually. And they're working out of a software system that is maybe spreadsheets, is maybe one of these specific legacy credentialing workflow systems, but that's the standard on how it works today. And yeah, the ultimate outcome is that, I mean, in some cases, we're able to speed up credentialing by 20 days, and that's really material for, or even faster in other cases, and that's really enabled some of our clients to be able to actually see patients a lot faster and generate revenue quicker.
Currently, Medallion is a different experience because presumably you're bigger. This is a bigger organization. Tell us a little bit about um, your company, how it's set up. Are you distributed, virtual, hybrid, and what you aim your culture to be like?
Yeah, we're around 200 full-time employees now. So yeah, certainly much different. And yeah, I mean, it's been really fun building this team. I think we've got a really great team. I think in terms of learnings, building the executive team is super critical. And making sure that um, top layer of senior folks is really aligned on what the goals are and is able to work really well together. Over the past 5 years, there's been times where our executive team has been, it's like really gelled together, and then times where there's pockets where one person maybe doesn't get along with another person, or there's someone on the team that needs to be replaced and is a weaker performer. And I think we finally 5 years in got to the point where now I feel like everybody on the team is really strong, in that there's good cohesion amongst the group. And that's really cool. We actually haven't really gotten to that point until now across the entire exec team. So it's really hard to hire really great execs, and I think equally hard to find people that actually all like mesh well together. So I think that's been something that's been a very really interesting learning. And then ultimately that group really drives then the culture downward. So yeah, I mean, we care a lot about obviously moving quickly. So bias for action is one of our top values. And things like ownership mentality, running through walls, acting as one team. These are all things that I think are really important and are only possible when you hire in people that innately, I think, really have those traits. Because I think some of those things are pretty hard to be able to teach and / like coach.
Mhm. It's interesting talking to founders and those that are scaling their companies quickly because they need to adapt and change how they lead their companies from, sometimes month to month, just because things are moving so quickly. I'm curious what maybe a key insight that you've uncovered or you've come to realize in the recent past on how you can improve as a leader.
It's a great question. One recently is, as the company has grown to the scale that's grown to, I've realized that, and especially because we're fully remote, communicating information that may be obvious to me, maybe obvious to our exec team, but is not obvious to our team, is super important. So I know of some founders that do this via sending out memos, or others that do it by giving maybe longer all hands presentations. I think there's a bunch of different ways to accomplish that, but I think that's really important.